we are going to cover a lot of ground. Am I crazy if they're going to start it at 4:00? Well, there's no European football championship to compete with today. Why not just have it last night?
I will say this, Adam, as someone who last covered the draft in person for the Cincinnati Enquirer in 2000 in Minneapolis, and the literal last player taken in the draft was Pete Michael of the Bearcats. So I had to deal with that on deadline. I am fully in favor of pushing this nonsense off into a soap opera type time slot and getting it over with then.
General Hospital is going to compete with the second round of the NBA draft, and we'll get to Kyle Filipowski in a second. I wanted to start really with Zach Edey. Did he surprise you going 9, regardless of where he went? He went to Memphis, the Grizzlies. It surprised me because I thought that the back-to-the-basket big man who really can't do much else, not that he's not great at it, but the back-to-the-basket big man in the NBA was kind of done with.
One of the things that's interesting about sports and analytics is if you go back to Moneyball was all about exploiting inefficiencies.
Yeah.
And not just these particular things are the inefficiencies for all time, but find what works against what people are not paying attention to or not dealing with and do that. And so along comes 21st century basketball and everybody's shooting the three. Well, if everybody's shooting the three and that's all they do, okay. and I'm being, I'm generalizing that.
Right.
But if that's the overlying emphasis on everything, then if you're the team that can do something else, maybe you have a chance. I think about that with baseball and how everybody's trying to hit home runs and everybody's striking out.
Yeah.
And I just keep thinking if somebody finds the next Tony Gwynn and Willie McGee, that they could win baseball games. So I kind of like this. I think that there's a logic to it. I was surprised it was as high as it was. I expected him, though, to go in the lottery. And I'll give a lot of credit to Jonathan Givony from ESPN. I've known him for 20 years or so. He's always worked his tail off. He was the first person that I noticed that talked about Zach as a lottery prospect.
Right.
And either he saw it or he spoke to people, but either way, it's doing the job, that said this is possible. And I think the thing that's missed with Zach is that Zach's trajectory has been up, 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 up. It has not leveled off. He has continued to improve. So why do we think he's done improving? Just because he's 23 or whatever he is, I don't see any reason to believe that he's done improving his game.
Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News. Look, I hope it works out for him. He had 2 amazing years the last 2 years at Purdue, and they came within, a juggernaut of winning the national championship as UConn. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think all 5 players went from the Huskies in the first round because there were so many. Whether it was G League, Ignite, international players, France had 3 of the first 6 players selected. So good on Zach Edey. As for Kyle Filipowski, are you surprised he's still there at number 31? He might go 31. He'll certainly go, I think, early in this round. But are you surprised he didn't get selected yesterday?
Honestly, no, because I did not see. I thought he was a fine player at Duke, very good player. But I did not see great progression in his body, in particular, between year 1 and year 2. And I think he needed to make more improvement in that area. He needed to become leaner, fitter, more dynamic. You can't go from Kyle Filipowski freshman year to all of a sudden you're Dominique Wilkins. I mean, that doesn't happen. But you can become better. We saw that with Edey. Edey, as a junior at Purdue, was not nearly as mobile and dynamic as he was as a senior. And so I thought that hurt him. And teams saw that. They saw a player who couldn't protect the bucket, was going to struggle to defend unless he makes great improvement. Now, you go back to someone like Udonis Haslem, who did not make that improvement physically while he was at while he was at Florida. But then made it in the year or 2 after and build a 20-year NBA career out of that. So it's still out there. And if he does make it, the team that signs him or drafts him will get a bargain because he is a highly skilled basketball player.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great offensive player. I mean, the shooting will be there because I think all he is consistency away from that being like a plus skill, to use a baseball term. He can be a plus shooter. He's a great passer. And he's a good rebounder. He needs to get stronger. And I think, and I said the same thing earlier. We were talking to Brian Geisinger about this. To me, I wasn't that surprised because the athleticism wasn't there. The strength wasn't there. But at some point, when that catches up, and I assume it will because he's a hard worker, then he's going to turn himself into a very valuable, certainly a rotational piece on a good NBA team. Who is the best player? Who do you think the best player was, at least coming out of college? It's hard to know about the international players. So who was the best college player drafted yesterday?
Well, the best college prospect, I mean, the best college player was Zach Edey. I mean, he's an all-time great college basketball player. Top 30 or so that have ever played the NCAA basketball. But the best college prospect for me was Steph Castle. And San Antonio got him. I know they were very excited because I communicated with a friend out there.
Yeah.
They were very excited that he was available to them. And it's an ideal pick for a team that's trying to build something around Victor Wembanyama. There's a lot of questions because Steph did not shoot the basketball particularly well. I think he'll become at least reliable in that area, a guy that you trust. And he'll look at what he did to Terrence Shannon in the NCAA tournament defensively. Shannon was rolling. He was averaging 30-plus a game. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, Terrence, even after Steph got done with him, still averaged 30 points a game in elimination games in March. That's how red hot he was, and Steph completely put that out.
Yeah, he's a dynamite player. It's I know I had seen a bunch of mock drafts that had Charlotte taking him at number 6, and I wasn't sure he was ever going to get to that point. They went nuts about Dalton Connect with the Lakers. Look, he is a wonderful offensive player, but to me, he's sort of like a designated hitter. Like, he's just an offensive player, and if you're going to win championships, you got to play both ends of the floor at this stage, and I just didn't see that from him, but they did get a great offensive guy, no?
Yeah, one thing that was interesting to me about Dalton is if you look at him, he looks kind of rigid and he plays kind of rigid, and I worry about that a little bit at the NBA level. But then I looked at his testing numbers from the combine. He out tested in every physical skill, the shuttle runs, the three-quarter court sprint, vertical leaps, and all that. He out tested Steph Castle in those categories, every single one. So he's maybe a better athlete than people realize. He's going to have to become a more adept defender, no doubt. But he only played one year of high-level college basketball. And I think that probably was a problem for him. He wasn't used to playing against SEC-level competition or eventually NCAA tournament-level competition. He wasn't used to that. You don't see that in the Big Sky. So I think that in time he can at least be an adequate defender, and he can score. And one of the things I tweeted last night after he was selected was that I've been waiting for 20 years or so for somebody to draft for LeBron a guy on the wing who can catch and shoot, because every team that he's played on has passed on every opportunity that they've had to draft a catch and shoot guy. So I was pleased for LeBron. The fact that he's 50 years old when it finally happened, well, that's just the way life goes sometimes.
And he's got J.J. Redick as a coach. All right, now to the most important thing that we will see today, starting at 6 o'clock, I believe. Team USA v. Panama, second round of group play in the Copa America. You wrote, Christian Pulisic is unquestionably the best American soccer player ever. I am not arguing with that. I have never been Team Pulisic, but he has won me over. He went to AC Milan and had an amazing year. He was in the Serie A first 11, like basically being chosen NFL All-Pro.
Right.
an all NBA first team. He had that good a season at a big club where he was relied upon. And he has shown better leadership and consistent performance than I ever thought we would see from him. To me, he was the shining light. There were a couple of things I really liked about their opening match. They could have scored more goals, but he was right at the front.
Oh, absolutely. He was tremendous in that game. The opening goal was fantastic. He was dangerous a lot of the night. He set up the second goal for Flo Balogun. He was terrific. And, to me, it wasn't really much of a debate that he was the best American soccer player. The question was, when would he overtake Landon Donovan as the best USMNT player? And I thought that game sort of said he's arrived. 30th goal in his 69th cap. It took Landon 87 caps to get the 30 goals. And Christian lost basically a full year of his production, not because of anything that he did, but because of the pandemic. The U.S. only played 3 games in 2020. That's right in the middle of his prime. That he got very little production because they had very little opportunity. So I think the fact that he's gotten done what he's gotten done. I had one person say, but he hasn't had his Algeria moment. And I'm like, do you realize what he put on the line to beat Iran? I don't know U.S. men's national team player has ever put himself in that position before to score a goal, but he did. So I don't ever question his commitment to the men's national team after what he did against Iran with that goal.
All right, so you and I were going back and forth. When my takeaway from that was Christian Pulisic and Anthony Robinson, Jedi Robinson plays left back. Those were the two guys who were so obviously better than everybody else that we have. We have other really good players. I think we need more out of Gio Reyna. I loved everything about Anthony Robinson. I think we need more out of Flo Balogun. It was great to see Tyler Adams back, but he took him off after 45 minutes because he's only played about 5 matches in the last year. So who else do we need to see more from?
Well, let me say this about Gio Reyna. I've heard a lot of criticism about Gio from his performance in the friendlies and then Sunday against Bolivia. And one of the things that's disappointed me about that is that, okay, you wanted him to play defense too. Now he's working really hard at it. And now you're mad. Okay, now you're not creating. That I think you have to start from the base of he's becoming for the U.S. a complete midfielder. If you're going to play him in the midfield, he can't just be doing ball tricks out in front of the box. He's got to be able to go basically 100 yards, and he's doing that. He's made some really crucial defensive plays. So I have been critical of Gio post World Cup and how he handled all that, but I really like how far he's coming on, and I want to get the opportunity to say that I respect what he's doing. I see more creation from him because he's got that in him. But teams are trying to take him out, and that's one of the reasons why you're seeing it come from other areas. Tyler Adams, I think, is on the level at his position of a Jedi Robinson at least, and he pushes Christian in terms of ability, but he hasn't been available. If the U.S. is going to do well in this tournament, that 45 is going to have to turn into 60 or 70 fairly soon. Certainly by the time you're playing either Colombia or Brazil or whomever in the quarterfinals. I think he's essential to their success. They're just not the same team without him. I still like to see Yunus Musa get out there more because I'm a big believer in him. I know he doesn't create a lot, but I think he makes you better at the things that U.S. traditionally has not been great at, which is possessing the ball. So I'd like to see him out there more. And then, you and I talked by text about the central defense. Still some concerns there.
Yeah.
Chris Richards has to stop giving away the ball. You give it away to Bolivia, they can't do much to hurt you. You give it away to Colombia, and it's in the back of the net.
Yeah, and either Colombia or Brazil, as you referenced, would be the first game of the knockout round, depending on where Carolina, where the U.S. finish. And it's really going to, they have to get a win today against Panama. And because it's going to come down to the game against Uruguay coming up on Monday. And if you win the group, you play the second place team from the other one, which is whoever finishes second between Colombia and Brazil. I think that's going to be Brazil. Everything I've seen from Colombia is much better than what I've seen from Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil will have to basically shock, maybe shock's a strong word, surprise Colombia based on the way things have gone in order to turn that around. They're going to play each other. That's a must win if Brazil is going to win the group. And it may be a must win for them to advance because their scoreless draw the other night certainly puts them in a position where they could be vulnerable to elimination. Probably won't happen, but it has entered the equation.
It has entered the chat. All right, real quick before I let Mike DeCourcy go. Is anybody in world football under more pressure than Gareth Southgate and England? Greg Berhalter is probably going, man, he's got it rough. I don't know what. Look, I'm not a Southgate guy. I think a lot of the players he brought on at the end of their match against, I forget who it was, Slovenia, a lot of those guys looked better than a lot of the guys that started.
Yeah. I was disappointed that he succumbed to the pressure to take Trent Alexander-Arnold out. Not that I thought Trent was playing great, but I think that the potential spark was still there, and it taking him out and putting Conor Gallagher in there. Gallagher was awful. I mean, full-time awful.
Yeah.
While he was out there. They're missing a lot from the left back situation. Luke Shaw being unavailable. I'm not the biggest Luke Shaw guy. I don't think he's in great shape, but he is really creative with his passing and shooting. And they're getting nothing at all out of Kieran Trippier. So there are things that are not happening there, but the whole orientation of the team is to go backward. I mean, I realize that sometimes possession soccer means you got to go backward.
Sure.
But they go backward all the time. If you sat there with a chart and counted their backward passes, I bet it's more than they send forward.
Yeah, well, we'll close on this. Phil Foden, who's been playing left wing, even though he plays more centrally for Manchester City, has completed more passes to Jordan Pickford, the goalkeeper, than he has to Harry Kane.
There you go.
The striker. So that is an Opta data fact right there. Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News, thank you so much for coming on. We'll talk again very soon.
Thanks, Adam.